Good morning. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone. Brought to you by Havana Smoke Shop. 2 locations in the Jackson metro area, I-55 North Frontage Road. And across from Shaggy's at the Reservoir. Havana Smoke Shop. For all your H. Upmans, Fuentes, Liga Privadas, La Flor Dominicanas, you name it, they've got it. Olivas and more. Havana Smoke Shop, 2 locations in the Jackson metro area. You're listening to 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS. We're going to have a Y'all Lifestyle Feast at 9:15. Compliments of our friends at Boar's Head. Boar's Head Compromise Elsewhere. The premium brand of deli meats and cheeses and hummus. And we're going to have a serious game day spread powered by Boar's Head. And we're super excited about it. 9:15, that'll be on the cameras. Blake and I basically will be picking out. We're going to get paid to eat. And we want to thank Nathan and the Boar's Head team for coming in and making this delicious spread of premium meats and cheeses and hummus. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Again, the Out of Bounds Show brought to you by Havana Smoke Shop. We welcome in Tom Luginbill on the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale guest line. Lugs, Gus Malzahn. Auburn wins on Saturday night, and then they fire Gus Malzahn on Sunday. A few days before signing day, they're ranked 42nd in the country on 247 Sports. He's had a good career, not a great career. I don't want to say were you surprised because this is the SEC, but what was your reaction when you saw it on Sunday?
That he got fired for being 0-12 on the road versus their rivals and not having a very good record against teams above 500. Everything else makes no sense. I mean, you've won an SEC West title. You've won an SEC title. You've played for a national championship. You've beaten Nick Saban more than anybody else. I think the real question to come out of all of this is who are you going to go get that wants to deal with all of the hands in the cookie jar that are present at Auburn if you're a coach? You know, you're going to say that, well, you know, we have resources, we're a good program, we've proven we can compete at an elite level, but we're going to be breathing down your neck all the time. We're going to be, you know, it's going to be a heavily critical environment, and we know you're already a good job, but come take this one. And on top of that, you know, everybody talking about Hugh Freeze. Isn't Hugh Freeze the exact same guy?
Yeah.
He's the exact same coach. I mean, to me, he's like, you make this move, and I understand, listen, sometimes things just run their course. They ran their course with Mark Richt, ran their course with Tommy Tuberville, ran its course with Mac Brown. I get all of those sorts of things. And you know what? Maybe it was time, and that's fair. That's cool. But when you do this, and you do it 3 days before National Signing Day, you better be calling a press conference this morning with who your new head coach is. Think about that. You're at Auburn, and you just fired your coach 3 days before National Signing Day.
And they kind of trip over, like, number 12 classes. Luke, you know this as the head of recruiting for ESPN. I mean, they kind of who they are. They live around 10, 11, 12, 13. I mean, and yet they're 42nd, which is kind of a head-scratcher, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is just reflective of numbers too, not necessarily ability level. In fact, I think they've got some really good offensive and defensive linemen in this class. And but yeah, I mean they've always been for us anywhere between 8 and 12 on average, which is, you know, it's a good spot to be. I mean, you can put together a championship level roster, a roster that could get you to a championship game. You could do that. There's no question. And so, you know, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it. I know it's a vicious business. One thing that I would put out there, and you should probably too, you know, all these people saying, how can you justify this in the midst of a pandemic? The school's not paying that out.
No.
The people that wanted him fired are paying it out. It's privately funded money. So if you want to complain to those people, why are you taking your hard-earned money and using it to get rid of a head coach? By all means. But don't be so misinformed to think that the university is writing a check for this.
No. So there's also some discussion that Kevin Steele could be promoted from within, and they marry him with a big-time offensive coordinator. Like maybe Freeze would come in for $2 million for 1 year. Granted, he's not going to stay long, so I don't know if we know this with the Gene Chiswick's and the Ed Ogerons. Yeah, you can surround them with X, Y, and Z, but can you continue to do that? Because once they win big, they're going to lose that OC or DC or combo. What do you make of hearing that? Kevin Steele, defensive coordinator, promoted, and maybe matching him with a Freeze or a big-time name at OC?
I think it's a huge long shot. I think that if you're going to make the move they made, you start fresh, you start from scratch, and you bring in. If you talk about in a press conference that you just felt like you needed to change the leadership. Well, a lot of that leadership's still in the building. So if you really truly mean that, then you need fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, different personalities, coaches and support staff that people don't know. That's how you start from scratch. That's how you start. I think, and get a fresh start and a blank canvas. So I would be very, very surprised. I'm curious, though, if from a recruiting standpoint, if conversations haven't been had or will be had for whoever the new head coach is to maintain some stability in recruiting to keep Kevin Steele on board. Because, hey, let's call it what it is. They haven't been what we thought they would be this year, but he has been really successful as a defensive coordinator there. They have had some outstanding defenses.
Yeah, they have. But then again, Lugs, they've been great on defense since I can remember football in 1980.
Yeah, I know.
When they dominated the 80s, and people forget that, they just lost out on 2 national titles. They dominated the 80s once Coach Bryant stepped down, and Georgia and others couldn't really get it. Anyway, Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst, ESPN, on the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale guest line, presented by Havana Smoke Shop. So would you hire Freeze or Sark if you were Auburn?
Actually, I'd probably hire Mario Cristobal.
Okay.
I would hire. Go ahead.
That surprises me. Why? Okay, go ahead. Why?
I think there's something about Mario's personality, his ability to really recruit the state of Florida well, and that's not to take anything away from Sark, or shoot Lane Kiffin or Hugh Freeze or whoever it is. If you actually had to really put my feet to the fire, and we were just talking about offensive coordinators, I would hire Sark above all of them, every one of them.
Okay.
Even Hugh Freeze. I think that he has proven to be so adaptable through the years to what football's evolved into and how to mirror it with your talent. If you looked at a USC coached offense in 2003 and 2004 and 2005, and you looked at Alabama now, you wouldn't even recognize it.
No.
And I think that's a sign of a really, really good coach. Now, I'm also of the belief that there are a ton of good football coaches out there that egos will not allow the school to pursue. Guys like Lance Leipold at Buffalo. All right. I think like if Michigan parts way with Harbaugh, they're nuts if they don't hire Lance Leipold. And so I think, everybody wants to have this big shiny toy under the tree, and they want to have the big splash and the big name. And I get that. And, in many instances, that's fine. It works out for everybody. But we close ourselves off to opportunities sometimes. And I think a lot of times it happens because we're not making the inquiries and asking the questions ourselves. We're contracting it out to some firm. And we're saying, okay, go find us the best guy. Well, once the firm gives you the guy, they're no longer responsible for it. You are.
All right. Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. This is I think Auburn's a good job, but it could be the most difficult job, or one of the top
Totally
2 or 3 in the country because of Bama, and the tie to Georgia every year, which I don't know if that'll ever get broken up. There's discussion within Birmingham and the ADs. I know you've heard this, that they may do away with the divisions. I would love to see that, but I'm in a state with Mississippi State and Ole Miss who have to play Bama, Auburn, LSU, and A&M every year. So
Right.
You would take Sark over all the offensive minds. You would take a hard look, and he may be your favorite, Cristobal. Where does Napier land for you in this whole discussion around Auburn?
I think that would be a bit of a stretch. That's just my opinion. And I only say that not because I don't think he's done a good job, but he hasn't really had to do it with any of his own guys. You know, he's in his third year and has inherited what was a really good roster and has continued to progress. I think it would be interesting to see what his program is going to look like at Louisiana 2 to 3 years from now. Are they still going to be in that 9-10 win category each and every year? So, you know, I'm not opposed to it. I can tell you right now, though, and I think it's arrogance and ego, that if you told Auburn fans that we just fired Gus Malzahn and we're going to hire a coach from the group of 5, they'd freak out.
Yeah. No, and that's, yeah. Coastal.
Fair or unfair, that's the reality of the situation.
I wonder, do you think this makes Philip Fulmer make a move, or they stand pat? How do you see what's going on at Tennessee as they continue to try to get the offense going?
I think the smart and savvy administrators and ADs are waiting till after this weekend. They are not going to make any moves that could disrupt recruiting if they don't have a plan in place that could answer the recruiting question immediately. That's why this whole thing with Auburn has stunned me, because everybody's already complaining that maybe your recruiting's taking a hit. It didn't last year. Last year's recruiting class was exceptional. If Tank Bigsby stays healthy, he could be a Heisman Trophy winner one day. He's that good. So I don't know, maybe with Phil and those guys, and I think it's always harder when you're at a place like Tennessee where you were the head coach there once. That's not a position that would be overly enjoyable if you're Jeremy Pruitt. And again, everybody talks about the finances and the ramifications of that, and amidst the pandemic, but school's not paying that out. Somebody else is. Right.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. Let's switch gears to what happened in Gainesville on Saturday night. Weird, crazy things happen at night in the league at times, and then you throw in the fog and everything else. It was just a wild, weird deal. What was your takeaway from everything that played out in the second half with LSU and Florida?
Well, I think the one thing that stood out the most is Florida is different with no Kyle Pitts. That changes things big time, because you have to be so aware of where he is all the time. And even when you still can't stop it. When you eliminate that element, I think it allows a defense to settle in a little bit. You're not so hyper-focused on how do we stop this guy. You can just kind of lay back and play defense and play the whole field instead of worrying about where one guy's lined up. How about, hey, Kyle Trask still played pretty good, threw for over 400 yards. And I think sometimes what happens is with young people is you can get to a point where you don't have a respect for your opponent because of what others have said about the opponent and how the opponent has performed to this point. And I think a little bit of that sunk in to Florida. And then just to have an upperclassman leader do what Marco Wilson did, which, by the way, have you watched it in slow-mo and seen his teammate punch him right in the face?
No, I didn't see that.
You got to go back to watch. Right after he throws the shoe,
okay,
his teammate sits right in front of you. You guys can look it up while we're talking. Hauls off and punches him right in the face mask. It was awesome. But no, I think they got sloppy. I think they went on cruise control a little bit. They disrespected their opponent, and they paid for it.
Yes. Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. They disrespected their opponent. And it looked like almost Mullen was in a rush on that first red zone series to start the game and going for it instead of kicking the field goal, which is fine. I mean, a lot of people are doing that now, but it was almost, hey, we need to hurry up and get up and get going and get done with this, because we're moving on to something else. I just kind of felt like what you just said, there wasn't the respect there, Tom.
Yeah, they're looking at that, and everybody says, "Oh, they're looking ahead to Alabama, looking ahead to Alabama." You can say you're not all you want, but when the team that's in front of Alabama has had the season that LSU has had, it's hard to get 18 to 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds to always focus on the task at hand.
Yeah.
It just is. That's human nature, and again, it's one of the reasons why I have such respect for what Dabo and Nick Saban and what an Urban Meyer would always have the ability to do, and that's play to your own standard and not worry about who the opponent is.
Do you feel like so many things, one day, 3.5 hours, 4 hours, maybe anything can happen with some of the top 4 teams?
Absolutely.
But do you feel like Bama's going to run away with this thing, or could you see them getting in a dogfight in the college football playoff?
Well, I could see them getting in somewhat of a scoring race when you consider who the offensive football teams would be in that scenario. Even this coming Saturday, I still believe and I maintain you better be prepared to score 45 points and be within a one-possession game in the last 7 minutes of the game. That's where you need to be. You cannot have multiple 3-and-outs. You can't have back-to-back 3-and-outs where Alabama scores both times. You're done. So how do you hold volley? That's the whole thing. Well, the way you do it is you hope and pray that Alabama helps you. Because when you go back to, and I'm going to use Clemson as this example, go back to the double overtime win that Notre Dame had over Clemson. I don't care that Trevor Lawrence didn't play, because DJ Uiagalelei played really, really well that day, okay? I know they had guys out on defense, but look at the mistakes Clemson made. Turnover in their own 20-yard line. A pass interference call on 3rd and 10. I mean, they did things that were uncharacteristic to their nature that gave momentum to the other sideline and kept them around. And that's the only way, when you don't have as much talent as the other team, that's the only way you're going to have an opportunity to win the game, in my opinion. You're going to have to play your best, and they're going to have to help you. So unless that happens, Alabama's better than everybody else. I know people hate to hear that. That's the reality of the situation. And if you don't like it, tough. Come up with a way of getting better players than they have. But that's where they are right now.
Who's your Heisman pick today?
Devontae Smith.
Nice.
And the reason why I say that, and everybody says, "Oh man, but he's sharing votes with Mac Jones." And listen, I get that. Okay, I would have Trevor Lawrence at number 2, not Mac Jones. The reason why I say that is I go back to the 1992 number 1 ranked Miami Hurricanes, and Gino Torretta won the Heisman Trophy and wasn't even the best player on his own team, and it wasn't even close. There's 10 players on that team that were better than he was.
Yes.
But who's the best player on Alabama's roster right now?
Devontae Smith.
Exactly. Who's the best player on Clemson's roster right now?
Trevor.
There you go. There's the answer to your question. And I'll say another thing, too. And we were doing a little Sunday recap for our college football breakdown. We have a Sunday show on ESPN called Who's In, and we have an opening statement each week. And my opening statement is, if you don't think the quarterback's important, look at the Georgia Bulldogs. Can you imagine if Georgia would have had a cleared to play JT Daniels from word go, the position that they would be in?
Yeah. Yeah. They may have beat Florida. Maybe. I don't know for sure. But that would have been a heck of a ball game. It wasn't. Right?
Right. I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Speaking of Georgia, did you see that happening? Them just absolutely blowing Missouri's doors off this weekend?
No, I didn't. I didn't see it happening on the road. I didn't see it happening in cold temps. What's happened though is, do you remember when Georgia was just, we would talk about it every week, and there's just no answer at quarterback, right? Well, now all of a sudden you can't run the ball. Well, why is that? Because they don't respect the passing game, so the defense always has one more player in the box than you have to block. Look what's happened to their offense in their run game and their third down production ever since the quarterback came into play. Now, all of a sudden, all that talent they have is being utilized to the max, all right, because people can't game plan against them. They don't have as good of players. And I think that Eli Drinkwitz has done a nice job. I think his quarterback's going to be a great player for years to come. But, man, I mean, Georgia, that was a non-competitive outcome right there.
Missouri, Mississippi State this weekend in Starkville. Who do you like and why?
I like Missouri because I think they're the better football team. I think they're more well-rounded. Personally, I just think Mississippi State needs to get into the offseason.
Yeah.
I think they need to get into the offseason. You are going to see a flooded transfer portal. You're going to see a complete overhaul of what's going on, and it is all going to be based upon who is going to do what he wants them to do the way he wants them to do it. And if you're not going to be there. It is that simple. And the problem is you can't remedy that now. All right. You need to get to the off season. You're doing everything you can with what you have now. I think they've done a nice job with the quarterback. Still can't run the football. I was a little perplexed last week by their decision in the plus territory down a possession.
Yeah.
But that was odd. But again, they like so many other teams, just they need to get into the offseason.
Do you think Hugh Freeze can take I want to go back real quick. Tom Luginbill, we got 1 minute, a minute and a half. Do you think that Hugh Freeze could take the Auburn job and be a grown-up long enough and run the program A to Z for years? Or is it just, hey, man, if we can bottle this thing for 4 years and he wins the West, then it's a win for everybody, even if something goes wrong somewhere else within the program?
So essentially you're saying, do you trust Hugh Freeze to just coach and recruit and do all the things he's supposed to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And not the things he's not supposed to be doing.
Right.
That's the risk that you run. And unfortunately, listen, he can apologize to the top of his lungs. I know he wants to put it all to bed, but it's going to follow you. That's the nature of being a public figure in a very public profession. So what you just outlined there, though, is, okay, could you win the West? Could you, play for an SEC championship? Could you do that within the first 4 years, and then something goes wrong and, they have to make a change? Gus Malzahn did everything you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And he did it all within the first 4 years. And it still doesn't matter because things run their course at that place. And, you're playing Georgia and Alabama every year. I go back to why he was let go. Didn't have a great record versus teams with a winning record. 0-12 on the road versus their greatest rivals. And I just think it got stale.
Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN on the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale guest line. Lugs, be good. We appreciate it, man.
All right. Thank you, man.
The show is brought to you by Havana Smoke Shop, 2 locations, I-55 North Frontage Road and across from Shaggy's on the Reservoir. For all your premium cigars, Havana Smoke Shop. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone is brought to you by Boar's Head. If it's game day, it's Boar's Head. Compromise elsewhere. The premium brand of deli meats and cheeses. And hummus. And we have the Boar's Head crew in studio. And we'll have a game day spread and charcuterie platter at 9:15. Back in a sec.